All right, let's jump right into this explainer and unpack version 2 of the Alkebuleum Whitepaper. We're going to look really closely at how this document builds a wildly compelling, highly credible investment case for institutional stakeholders and the global diaspora. If you've been following the digital transformation space, you already know that building the foundational infrastructure for an entire continent is just an absolute, undeniable generational opportunity. Alkebuleum is positioning itself squarely at the center of that, offering a sovereign blockchain network designed entirely around the actual on-the-ground realities of African governance, commerce, and identity. To keep things focused, we're treating this exactly like an institutional pitch deck. Here's the agenda. 1. The missing trust layer. 2. Sovereign African digital infrastructure. 3. Securing trust with PORA. 4. The protocols driving financial growth. 5. Alignment with the AFCFTA vision. And 6. The actual roadmap for investment. Let's get right into it.
Starting with Section 1, the missing trust layer, which is basically the massive bottleneck holding back Africa's digital economy right now. Because, let's face it, every modern economy fundamentally runs on trust infrastructure, things like land registries, credit bureaus, and regulatory filings.
Just to put the sheer scale of this into perspective, the African Continental Free Trade Area, the AFCFTA, covers 54 nations, 1.4 billion people, and a mind-blowing combined GDP of $3.4 trillion. That is a massive macro opportunity. And honestly, the choices being made right now about who builds and owns the digital foundations for this market, that's going to define the next century of growth.
But here's the catch. To actually unlock that $3.4 trillion of capital, we have to fix the current reality on the ground. Right now, across huge parts of the continent, trust infrastructure is totally fragmented, still stuck on paper, or completely controlled by outside systems. I mean, we're talking about crazy friction here. Imagine a Nigerian business owner crossing a border, and suddenly their perfectly good credit history basically resets to zero. Or a degree from Ghana that a Kenyan employer just can't easily verify. So Alkebuleum's core thesis is simple. Africa absolutely needs a unified, verifiable, completely sovereign trust infrastructure to smash these bottlenecks and let capital actually flow.
Which brings us to Section 2, Sovereign African Digital Infrastructure, built by Africa.
So what actually is Alkebuleum? It's a Layer 1, public, permissioned blockchain network. But the massive differentiator here is that it's purpose-built for the African continent and its global diaspora. You know, most blockchains today are built in places like Silicon Valley or Singapore and then sort of marketed outwards. Well, Alkebuleum completely flips that script. It's built from the ground up to act as the ultimate digital trust layer, letting every other system, whether it's financial, civic, or commercial, operate with absolute verifiable integrity across the entire continent.
And that brings us to this really crucial philosophy. A blockchain is literally only as trusted as the people validating it. So Alkebuleum's validators, they are the institutions Africa already trusts. Instead of leaning on, anonymous capital or random network nodes scattered all over the globe, Alkebuleum leverages real-world institutional credibility. They are basically taking the institutions that citizens and governments already trust in the physical world and bringing that exact trust directly on-chain.
So how do they technically pull that off? That's Section 3. Securing trust with PORA, which stands for Proof of Reputation and Authority. This is all about how the network physically secures its data. They use this PORA system, and under PORA, validators aren't just interchangeable anonymous wallets staking crypto tokens. No way. They are exclusively reputable, real-world institutions. By doing it this way, if someone misbehaves on the network, it instantly becomes a massive reputational and regulatory disaster for them in the real world. That creates a level of airtight security, clear ownership, and regulatory alignment that anonymous networks literally just can't compete with. When you look at the types of validators in this ecosystem, it's instantly clear this is highly curated to give institutional and diaspora investors absolute confidence. Think about it. You've got central banks bringing sovereign monetary credibility. You've got universities locking down civic and academic records. Diaspora institutions are plugging in global capital and representation. And fintechs are running the day-to-day financial infrastructure. The network intrinsically absorbs all that combined credibility. Let's shift gears and look at the actual tools being built in Section 4, Protocols Driving Financial Growth, the true engines of the economy.
Right off the bat, it's super important to note that Alkebuleum uses an EVM-compatible architecture, meaning it runs the Ethereum virtual machine. From an investment standpoint, that strategically de-risks the whole project. It means developers don't have to go learn some brand new coding language. They instantly get access to the massive global Solidity developer ecosystem and a battle-tested security model. And the best part, as the white paper highlights, using this global standard doesn't compromise Africa's total sovereignty over the network's governance one bit.
Now, running on top of that architecture are the foundational protocols. Let's talk about the identity protocol first, because this thing is a huge catalyst for cross-border capital flow. It uses zero-knowledge cryptography, which is a fancy way of saying citizens and businesses can prove exactly who they are and what they hold without actually handing over their raw, sensitive personal data to foreign infrastructure. That is a total game changer. It enables seamless, real-time verification anywhere in the world while keeping data sovereignty 100% intact.
And that leads perfectly into the credit protocol, which tackles one of the biggest structural roadblocks to capital access in Africa today. Remember that cross-border friction we talked about earlier? Well, this protocol literally transforms credit into a portable asset. It means a creditworthy, successful business in Lagos or Nairobi can just seamlessly carry its good standing to lenders across borders or straight to diaspora investors abroad. It's unlocking financial growth on a massive scale.
But of course, great tech needs a great strategy, which brings us to Section 5, aligning with AFCFTA's vision and the strategic fit. For institutional and diaspora investors, technological brilliance doesn't mean much without strategic alignment. Alkebuleum nails this by anchoring its goals directly to the institutional architects of Africa's future. It aligns perfectly with the AFCFTA's push for shared trade infrastructure. It acts as the digital foundation for the African Union's Agenda 2063, and it gives multilateral institutions, like the World Bank, the exact, neutral, verifiable layer they need for their digital programs. They aren't trying to fight the existing plans, they're literally building the substrate required to make them happen.
And listen, these are not just pie-in-the-sky theories. Alkebuleum is already powering actual, real-world use cases. The white paper dives into an anti-corruption pilot in Liberia focused on public procurement records. Plus, we're talking about lightning-fast cross-border settlements, super transparent diaspora investment vehicles, and tokenized land and property registries that create a totally dispute-resistant foundation for generational wealth. This is immediate, scalable utility that moves the economic needle today.
So, what's the plan to actually roll this all out? That's our final section, Section 6, the roadmap for investment, mapping out phased maturation.
Look, you can't rush foundational trust infrastructure, and this deliberate, phased timeline is exactly the kind of maturity institutional investors want to see. Phase 1 is happening right now, with the mainnet live and those critical institutional validators actively onboarding. By Phase 2, around 2026 to 2027, we're going to see the credit protocol deploy along with cross-border pilots. Phase 3 brings in advanced zero-knowledge subchain architecture for governments that need an extra layer of privacy. And finally, by Phase 4, heading into 2028 and beyond, the ultimate goal is full Africa CFTA-aligned continental coverage governed by a totally decentralized validator council.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a pretty provocative thought about governance and ownership. The infrastructure for Africa's digital future is actively being built right this second. The only real question is, who is going to own it? Alkebuleum is directly challenging the global diaspora, central banks, and major institutions to step up and claim their stake in the continent's foundational ledger of trust. It's an absolutely undeniable investment case, and for sure, it's one that's going to shape the entire economic landscape of the next decade.